Head injuries are the leading cause of sports and recreation-related death in the United States. Dylan Steigers was just 22 years old when a hit left him with a severe head injury in May of 2010.
It appeared that he was limping off the field. I thought he'd, hurt his knee badly or whatever, and as he made his way off the field, before he got off the field, one person was helping him, then two, and by the time he got to the other sideline where they had a training table, they were basically carrying him.
Looking back into Steigers' high school football career, his parents, Tom and Cindy, think it was likely that their son also suffered from several concussions.
When he was a senior, we were playing over in Helena, and he was concussed pretty badly. And the trainer was afraid that he would go back in the game, I think, because she took his helmet away, and he was furious. He was a tough guy, and he could take a hit, and he was proud of it.
I did take his helmet, and I stood next to him, and he kept saying, "Can I go back in? Can I go back in? No, Dylan. No, Dylan. Can I go back in? Nope. How about after halftime? Nope."
Sentinel High School athletic trainer Danielle Halko says this was just how much Steigers loved the game. After his high school career, he returned to the sport after a short break to play for Eastern Oregon University. During a spring scrimmage in May of 2010, he endured what his parents thought was a normal hit.
It exploded in a hurry. I don't know how else to say it. By the time I ran across around the end of the field and over to this training table, he was starting to convulse and go through all kinds of different
well, and they asked
symptoms.
They asked him the concussion
questions.
questions.
Yeah, they were asking him questions, and they asked him, did he know where he was, and he didn't answer. I mean, he shook his head yes. They asked him several, do you know what day it is, and he shook his head yes. They asked him how old he was, and he said he was 21. And they thought, oh good, he knows how old he was. And I shook my head and I said, no, he's 22 now. He'd just turned 22 a couple months before that. So, and that was the last words he spoke.
It wasn't a concussion this time. It was a severe internal brain bleed that left him on life support in a Boise hospital.
He was taken off of life support after the relatives that were frantically trying to get there to see him, and he would have died if he wasn't on life support.
While he didn't die from a concussion, Dylan had several in his career, and there's a new realization that they can be very dangerous for athletes, especially repeated concussions. This is known as post-concussion syndrome.
And that's when you have a concussion that doesn't completely heal, or you have a concussion and then you have another concussion on top of the first one, and those symptoms don't completely heal, and then you have long-term symptoms.
Local physical therapist Jill Olson and a team of Montana physical therapists and neurologists decided to use his tragic death to shine a light on post-concussion syndrome, forming the Dylan Steigers Concussion Project.
When we first started our concussion project, we knew we were going to meet a lot of resistance in Missoula. And after Dylan passed away, I said, unfortunately now we're going to have our listening ear in Missoula. And Missoula is going to be very open to all that we have to say about concussions because of Dylan.
The project is dedicated to changing the way these mild traumatic brain injuries are recognized. Concussions cannot be diagnosed by a scan, but only by their long list of symptoms. Olson says this is because a chemical storm is taking place inside the brain that leads to a buildup of proteins.
Protein then starts to cloud the brain, and it resembles something very similar to Alzheimer's and dementia. And that's what's causing a lot of this dementia that we're seeing in our pro football players. And they're actually seeing some dementia in 17-year-old football players now from the cumulative trauma of these hits that these young players are taking over and over.
The Dylan Steigers Concussion Project tests an athlete's balance, memory, and cognitive ability before a concussion. After a concussion, they use the same test to assess when the athlete's brain returns to normal and they can return to play.
It gives us as players a lot of knowledge to know when we can go back and what the symptoms are and how we should feel before we go back.
Sentinel High School senior Kagan Kamane plays tight end and outside linebacker for the football team. He's had 2 diagnosed concussions and 1 brain hemorrhage, which resulted in his year-long retirement from football his junior year.
You know, I try to not really think about it. I mean, it still kind of scares me every time I get hit in the head if that could happen again. But I mean, with it being my senior year, I just try to not really think about it and just play the game and have fun.
The project provides the tests to athletes for little or no cost. Since 2010, the project has tested more than 1,000 athletes and helped manage 300 concussions. Tom and Cindy lent their support as well, raising money for the project, and they hope to see it expand to middle school sports this year.
And it's a really positive place to put our grief. You know, our grief just could have destroyed us, and there's days that I thought it would. But this is a really good place and a positive place to put our grief.
Obviously, we don't do it for our own self-gratification or trying to build ourselves up. I myself, I always hearken back to, if you can keep one other family from having to suffer the grief we have, it makes it worth it.
Having already been affected by concussions, Kamine believes it's sad that it took Dylan's death to raise awareness of sports-related head injuries.
It makes me, kind of sick to my stomach. It's a terrible thing, and it's just, it's something that happened, and it's horrible, but, I think it can end up saving a lot of people for bringing all this recognition to Missoula, especially with the project, and making sure people have to go through all these steps before they can return to play. Because I'm sure back then, a lot of people probably didn't even report their concussions. They just told coach they wanted to go back in.
I guess I'm humbled. I'm humbled that a young man would come in here and sit and talk about how he's been impacted by it, because I think football players are so tough and they just want to play and without thinking about the consequences. And it's humbling for me to think about him coming in here and saying that we will never recover. But if you can do something positive in your life to help somebody else, that's very healing.
I'm Mary DeMorris from Sentinel High School for the PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs.